This tortured figure's silent scream has become the most recognizable expression of human anxiety in art history. But what most people don't know is that Edvard Munch painted it during a moment of complete psychological breakdown. And the terrifying face we think we see isn't actually screaming at all. I'm Oleg G from Art Explained Simply and Quickly, and today we're diving into the dark psychological depths of The Scream, a painting that captures not just one man's mental anguish, but the existential terror that defines modern life itself. This isn't just an image of someone having a bad day. Every distorted line, every swirling color, every impossible perspective in this painting was born from Munch's intimate experience with mental illness, family tragedy, and the crushing weight of modern alienation. The figure's agonized expression has become shorthand for psychological distress in popular culture, but the real story behind this masterpiece reveals truths about anxiety, depression, and human suffering that are more relevant today than ever before. Created in 1893, The Scream emerged from one of the darkest periods in Munch's life, when he was grappling with severe depression, anxiety attacks, and what he described as the sickness unto death. But this wasn't just personal trauma translated into art. It was Munch's attempt to visualize the psychological condition of an entire generation caught between traditional values and modern uncertainty. The scene appears deceptively simple. A figure stands on a bridge, hands pressed to its head, mouth open in what seems like a scream of terror or anguish. Behind the figure, a landscape writhes with unnatural colors. Blood red sky, deep blue water, twisted perspective that makes the whole world seem unstable. But every element of this composition was carefully orchestrated to create a visual representation of psychological crisis that goes far beyond simple illustration. Before we explore the deeper meanings, I'm curious about your personal connection to this image. Have you ever felt the kind of overwhelming anxiety or existential dread that Munch captures here? What do you think makes this particular expression of psychological distress so universally recognizable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Munch's own description of the painting's origin provides crucial insight into its meaning. He wrote, "I was walking down the road with two friends when the sun set. Suddenly, the sky turned as red as blood. I stopped and leaned against the fence, feeling unspeakably tired. Tongues of fire and blood stretched over the bluish-black fjord. My friends went on walking while I lagged behind, shivering with fear. Then I heard the scream of nature." This account reveals that the figure isn't screaming, it's hearing the scream of existence itself. This distinction is crucial for understanding the painting's psychological sophistication. The figure represents someone overwhelmed not by their own voice, but by the cosmic horror of consciousness itself. The terrible recognition of mortality, meaninglessness, and isolation that accompanies human self-awareness. The hands pressed to the head suggest an attempt to block out this unbearable cosmic scream rather than contributing to it. The distorted perspective creates a sense of psychological space rather than physical space. The bridge appears to tilt and warp, the railings converge at impossible angles, the entire environment seems to bend around the figure's mental state. This isn't faulty technique, but sophisticated understanding of how anxiety and depression can literally distort our perception of reality. If you're finding this video helpful, please hit like to help the YouTube algorithm push my videos to other art lovers. Want to support further? Check out my affordable membership options with exclusive perks, or simply use it to say thanks. YouTube monetization isn't generous, and your support helps me create content like this every week. Every bit of support helps. The color choices operate on both emotional and symbolic levels. The blood red sky suggests violence, terror, and apocalyptic vision. The contrast between warm sky and cool water creates visual tension that mirrors psychological conflict. The yellow-orange figure stands out against these deeper colors, suggesting isolation and vulnerability. These aren't naturalistic colors, but psychological colors, the way the world looks when filtered through extreme mental distress. The brushwork and technique reinforce the painting's emotional content. The sky is painted with flowing, undulating strokes that suggest movement and instability. The water below uses more controlled horizontal strokes that create a sense of depth and distance. The figure itself is rendered with bold, simplified forms that emphasize emotional expression over realistic detail. This technical variety creates a visual rhythm that mirrors the chaos of psychological crisis. The location of the scene adds another layer of meaning. The bridge represents a liminal space, a place of transition and potential danger. Bridges appear frequently in literature and art as symbols of psychological passages, moments of decision, or states of suspension between different realities. The figure stands literally and metaphorically suspended over the abyss of modern existence. Munch created multiple versions of this composition, exploring different media and approaches to the same basic image. The most famous version uses oil, tempera, and pastel on cardboard, an unusual combination that creates unique textural effects. The mixed media approach suggests the difficulty of capturing psychological states through any single artistic technique. The cultural context of 1890s Norway provides important background for understanding the painting's significance. This was a period of rapid social and technological change when traditional rural life was giving way to industrial modernization. Many people experienced this transition as profoundly disorienting, losing connection to stable social structures and traditional sources of meaning. Munch's Scream captures this collective psychological condition. The influence of contemporary psychological and philosophical thought on Munch's work cannot be overstated. He was aware of emerging theories about the unconscious mind, the nature of mental illness, and the psychological costs of modern civilization. The painting can be read as a visual representation of what philosophers like Kierkegaard and Nietzsche were describing in their writings about anxiety, alienation, and the death of traditional meaning systems. Now, I'd love to hear your perspective on how this relates to our current moment in an age of social media, global anxiety, and constant information overload. Do you think Munch's visualization of existential dread feels more or less relevant than it did 130 years ago? How do you think contemporary mental health awareness changes how we interpret this image? Share your thoughts in the comments. The painting's relationship to Munch's personal mental health struggles adds biographical depth to its universal themes. Throughout his life, Munch battled what would now be diagnosed as depression, anxiety disorders, and possibly bipolar disorder. His family history included mental illness, early deaths, and ongoing psychological trauma. The painting emerges from this personal context while transcending it to speak to broader human experiences. The symbolism extends beyond obvious psychological interpretation into spiritual and existential territory. The Scream can be read as a response to the loss of religious faith in the modern world, the terror of confronting existence without traditional sources of comfort and meaning. The figure stands alone against an indifferent universe, forced to create meaning in a world that offers none. The composition's emphasis on isolation reflects changing social conditions in the late 19th century. Urbanization and industrialization were breaking down traditional community structures, leaving individuals more psychologically isolated than ever before. The two friends walking away in the background emphasize the figure's solitude. Even in the presence of others, the deepest psychological experiences. The painting's influence on subsequent art has been enormous, establishing visual vocabularies for representing psychological states that continue to influence contemporary artists. From German Expressionism to abstract expressionism to contemporary digital art, artists have drawn on Munch's techniques for visualizing internal emotional realities. The commercial and popular culture appropriation of the Scream raises interesting questions about how artistic meaning changes through reproduction and commodification. The image appears on everything from coffee mugs to Halloween masks, often stripped of its psychological complexity and reduced to a simple expression of surprise or fear. This transformation reveals how market forces can simultaneously spread and dilute artistic meaning. The painting's status as a target for art theft reflects both its cultural value and the psychological fascination it holds for disturbed individuals. Multiple thefts and recovery attempts have turned the painting into a symbol not just of psychological distress, but of cultural vulnerability and the need to protect artistic heritage. Contemporary mental health awareness brings new perspectives to interpreting the scream. Modern understanding of anxiety disorders, PTSD, and depression provides vocabularies for discussing the psychological states that Munch was visualizing through purely artistic means. The painting becomes a historical document of mental health experiences as well as an artistic achievement. The digital age has given new life to Munch's image through memes, social media, and online communication. The screaming figure has become a shorthand for expressing everything from mild frustration to existential crisis, demonstrating the image's continued relevance to contemporary emotional communication. The conservation challenges facing the scream reflect both its age and its unconventional materials. The mixed media approach that creates its unique visual effects also creates preservation problems. Climate control, light exposure, and chemical stability all require constant monitoring to preserve the painting's original appearance and emotional impact. The painting's location in Oslo's National Museum creates opportunities for educational programming that connects artistic achievement to mental health awareness. Museum presentations often include discussions of how art can both express and potentially help process psychological distress, though always with appropriate cautions about the relationship between creativity and mental illness. The theological implications of the painting deserve consideration. The scream of nature that Munch described suggests a godless universe where natural forces offer no comfort or meaning. This represents a stark departure from traditional religious art that found divine purpose in natural phenomena. The painting embodies the psychological costs of losing religious faith without finding adequate secular replacements. The gender ambiguity of the central figure adds another layer of interpretation. The screaming figure appears neither clearly male nor female, suggesting that the psychological experiences it represents transcend gender categories. This universality helps explain the image's broad cultural resonance across different demographic groups. The painting's exploration of time and movement through static media demonstrates Munch's sophisticated understanding of how visual art can suggest temporal experiences. The flowing sky, the figure's apparent motion, the sense of a moment captured mid-crisis, all create impressions of ongoing action within a still image. The influence of contemporary scientific thought about sound, vibration, and wave phenomena may have influenced Munch's visual representation of the scream as something that ripples through the environment. The undulating forms throughout the composition suggest that the psychological crisis is affecting the entire perceptual field, not just the individual figure. If you're drawn to art that fearlessly explores the darkest aspects of human consciousness while creating beauty from psychological pain, hit that subscribe button right now and join our community of art explorers. Every week on Art Explained Simply and Quickly, we examine works that help us understand both the creative potential and the psychological costs of artistic expression. How do you think art can help us process difficult emotions like anxiety and depression? What role should museums and cultural institutions play in discussions about mental health? Do you find that looking at expressions of psychological distress in art makes your own difficult emotions feel more manageable or more overwhelming? Your perspectives on these important questions contribute to ongoing conversations about art's relationship to mental health and emotional well-being. If this video helped you understand the complex psychological and cultural meanings behind this iconic image of human anguish, give it a thumbs up. It helps more people discover these important explorations of art's power to visualize and potentially transform our understanding of mental and emotional experience. See you in the next exploration.